only at West Ham could you have 4 managers in the last 2 years and not have an overarching strategy. So you've got 4 different managers, players, and then you wonder why we're in the shit because we haven't got a system. I don't get it. We have got to be though in terms of future proofing the club and the squad and the future planning of the club. We've got to be the worst club, if not in the Premier League, in England for it. Bearing in mind the budget and the resources we've got.
We got the worst owner in the country. I believe that. I genuinely believe. But it's and everything you said is true because of that. Because we've gone from, he doesn't know what he wants his club to be. All he knows is that he wants someone that's out of work, that is controllable, and has some sort of Premier League experience, and that seems to be his go-to, his mantra. And as a result, there is no philosophy. He doesn't want to relinquish control. He doesn't want to hand over. We've tried directors of football, Hughes and Macaulay and Steinen, and he never wanted to hand over any control to anyone to say, look, go and get the right manager, get the right players, and let's implement something that's going to work long term. He wants to make sure his fingerprints are all over everything, that we do, so that it can claim success for it. If it doesn't go successful, then he can go, well, I kind of appointed these guys to do that and they didn't do it. He's desperately trying to maintain his image whilst refusing to take any responsibility or accountability for the things that go wrong. And this squad is testament to that. Everything about this club is testament to that, really. But
do you remember the radio interview he gave where he took credit for Zuma and Benrahma? Zuma, who was one of the great players in our rise, and Benrahma, who coincidentally scored the goal that took us, that scored one of the 2 goals, that won it for us in Prague. Yet he said nothing about any of the others, only those 2. Why is it only the success stories that you're taking credit for? Because he's unanswerable to anyone because he owns the club. He's living in a fairy world. I don't get it. I don't get why he's still here. On a human level, I don't get why you are still here. My granddad's the same age as David Sullivan. And he actually asked me this the other day. He goes, why do you think he's still there? I said, what do you mean? He goes, you obviously don't like him because he's hated by your fan base. He's 77 years old, not short of a few quid. Why do you need the hassle? And I said, because he's a power trip. But he is right in terms of the question. Why are you here? You don't need, if you were a businessman trying to invest in the future, then surely you would put more money into the club to have the facilities in order to do stuff. But we're not. We're just ambling from one season to the next. And he's just seemingly waiting to check out until he gets an offer that he finds acceptable. But we're only going to get that if you do well. The worse we do, the less the club is going to be worth. It's basic business.
He's a narcissist. In the day's narcissism. That's what's going on. And hopefully now Kretinsky, I say hopefully, right? Kretinsky's increased his stakeholding. Him and Sullivan now own 40% each. Kretinsky's just as culpable. For a man who's had quite a successful business career, what has he been doing while this club's been burning? What is, can we trust him? Can we put faith in him that he's going to be the man that if he buys out Sullivan, he's going to restore us? He's going to rebuild the club? Because no sign of it yet.
I mean, you put we're in obviously a group chat for this show on WhatsApp, and you put a podcast in to the group chat the other day on West Ham's finances from Christian Perslow, and I think it was Henry Winter. And one thing they did say about Kretinsky was that he'd take over a business that doesn't seem fashionable and turn it into a behemoth. So he did it with Royal Mail. He's involved with Sainsbury's, I think they said. So he is known for turning around failing businesses. So I don't care if he's not as involved as Sullivan, provided the players and the players are in there, the people that are going to recruit the players are in there, and the tools are there to succeed. I don't care.
Yeah, but he does share some culpability for our current situation. That's my point. Is that he's had shares. You know, he's allowed Sullivan to run this club effectively in the manner he has, and at no point appears to have offered any kind of intervention. I understand he may want to buy distressed assets. I understand that he may want to have done well with Sainsbury's. There's a big difference between a supermarket, which isn't going to compete with the local grocery shops, and isn't in too much competition, although it is in some competition with other supermarkets because they've all got their own sites, and governments and local councils and that generally got planning rules in place that stop 3 or 4 supermarkets coming up within a very short gap of each other. So at Sainsbury's is kind of, it's not like a football club where you're going to go to the championship. You've got 23 other clubs next year that are going to be spending 120% of their turnover on wages because they want to get to the level we've just come down from. At the same time that you're trying to cover £100 million cash flow problem and facilitate an overhaul of the squads, losing all the players that don't want to be here on their high wages, and trying to get what you can for players that are going to be on big money but aren't going to attract anyone. I mean, who's coming in for Max Kilman? To pay him his 50 or 60 or 70 grand a week, and what kind of fee are they going to offer in order for you to lose him off your wage bill? It's that's just bad business and bad planning from the club. And Kretinsky's going to find this out. He's going to have it so much. He would have had this so much easier if he'd have just put an investment in January to allow Nuno to at least partially rebuild some key areas that he is going down and then trying to rebuild. That is a far harder job than he would have had if he just put the money in January.
Yeah, mate, I 100% agree. But looking at it from Kretinsky's point of view and from what this podcast said last week, and Christian Poslow, for those that don't know, he was involved with Aston Villa in their rise from the Championship to where they are now for a period of time. And he was involved with Liverpool when they were going through financial troubles. He was at the club then as well. And what he was saying is, if West Ham go down, they're worth a lot less. Kretinsky will then offer the money for a Championship club, which is probably going to be at least 2/3 of what you would for a Premier League club, and then get a controlling stake. And it might not be in the first year, but it might be after 2 years or whatever. But he is looking at the long-term game. So do I agree with it? No, because we're going to suffer. But from a businessman's point of view, and you're talking about where's Kretinsky and all of this, he's looking at it from a business point of view.
I think if that was 100% true, he wouldn't have increased his stakeholding now. He would have waited 3 or 4 weeks for relegation to be confirmed, and then he would have increased it. I don't know what he's gained from increasing it to 40% now. And paying presumably on that a premium on his shares, unless they've agreed a lower rate.
Apparently, there was an exit strategy, wasn't there, for David Sullivan and David Gold when Kretinsky first come in. So that might be immaterial of what league we're in. There might just be an agreed number.
My understanding, as I remember it from the time, was that he had a year to buy out Sullivan and Gold for the same price that he'd paid for his shares to invest in the club, and he never took that option to buy more.
I mean, yeah, we're both speculating. Sorry, at this point, but yeah, from what that podcast said, there's kind of an agreed fee or an agreed fee per percent of the club, and that's why it's probably immaterial will we go up, or we stay up or go down. Sorry, like it's murky times for the club because, like you say, we don't really know a lot about him. It doesn't look to be the most straightforward deal to understand. When a professional in Christian Poslow couldn't fully understand it himself, it sums the club up, doesn't it? We are a circus. We are run like an amateur football club with the money to be a professional club, if that makes sense.
we're run like I'll tell you what Sullivan's like. I remember when I was about 10 years old, 11 years old, getting Premier Manager 98 for my PlayStation. And I remember going through the game and just identifying all these players that were available cheap, right? And I was like, oh, I can get them, I can sign them. And then I showed this list to my dad. He went, you've got a lot of very old strikers here. And I kind of feel that's how Sullivan's doing it, really. I think he's kind of going through it, going like, who's available and who's cheap. And then we're ending up with, Callum Wilson. And by the way, I just remember that, I hate Callum Wilson I don't hate, that's a strong word. I strongly dislike and resent Callum Wilson as a person for everything he's said about us and what he's done on the pitch against us over his career. But I will respect and admire the fact that I think as a super sub, he does a brilliant job for us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all of these things calling for him to be a starter in the team. I'm just like, cool. I understand what you're saying. You're wrong because he can't do more than an hour. I mean, in Nuno's eyes, he couldn't do more than an hour in November against Bournemouth, which is why he come off.
I still think he's got a good half hour in him, and I think if you give him half hour, you get he can just he doesn't need to look at the fuel tank. He can just give it everything, run himself into the ground, harry defenders, go and chase down lost causes, and he scores goals. And he's been brilliant off the bench like that. When you start him, he looks like someone who's kind of trying to reserve and manage that, and he's trying to just get through 90 minutes rather than play the way he can. And I feel like that with him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we'd be better off playing three in midfield, Tatty up front for the first hour, bring in a Kante, and that's the hill I will die on. We need legs in that midfield. If it's not him, then at the very least Potts, and then bring Wilson on with half an hour to go, because it doesn't work when he starts. We've seen this. He's a goal scorer. He is a put the ball in the box. And when do you want someone like that in the last half an hour when they're beginning to tire because they've played an hour of football? It's not a hard thing to understand.